Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into something a little more medicinal and a lot more unhinged. Welcome to the world of Victorian women and the miracle drug that turned proper ladies into the most entertaining maniacs the 19th century ever saw. That's right, tonight we're talking about the notorious, the delightful, the absolutely bonkers era when doctors prescribed pure pharmaceutical chaos in a bottle. So before you get cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this sort of soothing nonsense. Leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, put a fan on for that cozy background hum, and get comfortable. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered why so many Victorian novels feature women fainting, weeping, or staring out windows with the intensity of a caffeinated owl? What exactly was in those mysterious nerve tonics they sipped from tiny spoons? Did anyone ever read the label? Would you have survived an era where the cure for everything was more drugs? Why were so many respectable ladies suddenly overcome with the urge to redecorate the parlor at 3 a.m., write 40-page love letters to the family dog, or decide the piano needed to be played at full volume in the middle of the night? And most importantly, if you woke up in Victorian England, would you be considered a medical marvel or a medical emergency? Would you end up with your own chaise lounge or your own padded room? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1869, somewhere between a fainting couch and a pharmacy that makes Burning Man look sober. Good luck. You open your eyes to a world painted in smog and embroidered antimacassars. The streets echo with the clip-clop of horses and the distant sound of someone having a nervous breakdown over tea. It's 1869, and the only thing more common than tuberculosis is a doctor's prescription pad. The first thing you notice, after your existential confusion, is the smell. It's as if a chimney sweep and a perfumer got into a brawl and decided to settle it in your nostrils. Coal smoke hangs over everything. Houses, hats, people, the Queen's corgis. You step outside and realize the world is painted in permanent twilight, courtesy of London's famous pea soupers, a kind of fog so thick you could slice it and serve it on toast. Somewhere, a passing stranger coughs with real Victorian flair, handkerchief pressed dramatically to lips, while you attempt to orient yourself in this Dickensian fever dream. Your home is a masterpiece of dark wood, ornamental clutter, and a deep, unspoken rivalry between dust and the housemaid. There are more doilies than you have relatives. Every flat surface bristles with vases, figurines, commemorative plates, and odd, fragile things you're not supposed to touch. The wallpaper, colored a sickly shade of arsenic green, is both the pride of your parlor and an actual health hazard. But no matter, what's a little poison between friends? You make a mental note not to lick the walls, just in case. Out on the street, things are no less dramatic. Carriages trundle by, wheels rattling over cobblestones, while street vendors hawk questionable pies and even more questionable news. The city is alive with activity and, frankly, on the edge of a collective nervous breakdown. It's not just the working classes struggling through factory shifts and tenement squalor. Even the upper crust is teetering, clutching at lace collars, anxiously awaiting the next telegraph, announcing someone else's tragic demise from brain fever, female hysteria, or a rogue draft from the window. You pass a chemist's shop, its windows gleaming with bottles promising to cure everything from nerves to nostalgia to the heartbreak of a bad hat. The air inside is heavy with camphor and hope. Ladies glide in, faces pinched with anticipation and corsets. You overhear snippets. "My sleep, doctor, it's simply vanished. I fainted again at the thought of boiled mutton." Is it true the Queen herself takes this? The pharmacist, sporting a beard large enough to conceal several small mammals, nods sagely and mixes up something brown, sticky, and highly questionable. And yet, for all the dread, there's a kind of optimism in the air, a sense that, with the right remedy or a brisk walk in the park, avoiding the open sewer, anything can be fixed. You look up and see posters for traveling mesmerists, spa cures, and spiritualist lectures promising to contact dearly departed relatives who, frankly, might be better off. Inside your own home, the battle against anxiety is relentless. Someone is always rearranging the china, dusting the antimacassars, or quietly judging your posture. Don't slouch, darling, you'll get a spinal disease. You sip weak tea, stare into the middle distance, and ponder the list of things you're supposed to worry about. Declining morals, impure water, spontaneous combustion, and the ever-present threat of your neighbor buying a better carriage. If you're a woman, congratulations. You are at least a dozen times more likely to be diagnosed with a vague, frightening-sounding condition that requires rest, quiet, and a small glass of laudanum at breakfast. If you're a man, you're required to bottle up your emotions until you explode, ideally in a well-tailored suit at your club. As the sun attempts to burn through the smoke, you realize something. Beneath the anxiety, the coal, and the unstoppable march of questionable science, Victorian England is buzzing with life. Messy, noisy, half-mad, and ready to medicate at a moment's notice. And so are you. Congratulations. You're officially part of the world's most anxious, medicated, and over-decorated society. And the day has only just begun. Your first stop is the family physician, a man with a walrus moustache, questionable hygiene, and an unwavering faith in the power of anything that comes in a brown bottle. If it's not working, just add more opium. He greets you with a flourish of his cane and a handshake that smells faintly of carbolic acid and last night's gin. His office is a temple to Victorian medicine. Jars of mysterious powders line the shelves, medical textbooks are piled precariously, and somewhere, a dog-eared copy of The Lancet is holding up a wobbly leg of his desk. Above all, his facial hair dominates the room, swirling in elaborate, waxed whirls as if independently searching for the cure to scurvy. You settle into the world's lumpiest chair, crossing your ankles demurely as is proper for a person whose skeleton is being gently realigned by overstuffed horsehair. The doctor peers at you over his pince-nez, then whips out a notebook and begins his examination with all the subtlety of a man trying to guess the winner at the horse races. What seems to be the trouble today? Insomnia, melancholy, a touch of the vapors? He offers a sympathetic, if distracted, nod as you describe your symptoms. It doesn't matter. The prescription is the same. Victorian medicine is less about diagnosis and more about performance art. The doctor makes a great show of checking your pulse, by which he means holding your wrist for exactly 3 seconds, frowning, and then staring thoughtfully out the window. He asks if you've been eating enough beef tea, if your bowels are regular, if you've experienced any strong emotions lately, preferably none. Too much excitement can be fatal, he warns. Especially if you're a woman who recently saw a man remove his hat indoors. He pulls out his stethoscope, which resembles a wooden rolling pin, and places it somewhere vaguely near your heart. He hums. He clicks his tongue. He scribbles something illegible. Yes, he announces, it's just as I suspected. Your humors are imbalanced, and your nervous system is dangerously overwrought. He looks gravely pleased, as if he's cracked the code to the human soul and also remembered where he put his spectacles. Treatment options depend less on your symptoms and more on what's trending among his medical acquaintances. Bleeding? Always an option. A brisk walk and some cold water dousing, if you're lucky. But the real magic happens with the arrival of the tonics. He rummages through his apothecary chest and produces a bottle with a label that's half Latin, half wishful thinking. Laudanum, morphine, tincture of cannabis, syrup of codeine. He lines them up like party favors at the world's worst dinner party. He explains that these substances are perfectly safe, thoroughly modern, and endorsed by every upstanding member of the Royal College of Physicians, or at least those who are still alive. Side effects? A touch of dizziness. Perhaps mild euphoria. Rarely. A tendency to recite Shakespeare at inopportune times. He winks. You're not sure if he's joking. Before you leave, he recommends a mustard plaster for your chest, a blistering agent for your feet, and, just in case, a nice quiet rest in the countryside. Try not to think too hard. And absolutely no novels. With a final flourish, he scribbles your prescription in handwriting so incomprehensible it could double as a coded message to Russian spies. You leave the office clutching a bag of dubious remedies and the lingering sense that you have just been treated by a man who considers leeches both pets and medical professionals. Victorian medicine, it's all confidence, whiskers, and hope. Good luck. Feeling tired? Overwhelmed? Struggling to cope with a husband who smells like mothballs? Congratulations, you've been diagnosed with nervous hysteria, female troubles, or simply the vapors. The cure is as mysterious as the diagnosis. Your journey begins with the simple act of existing as a Victorian woman. If you are unmarried, your options are limited to fainting gracefully at social gatherings, dabbing at your forehead with an embroidered handkerchief, and occasionally staring wistfully at a rain-streaked window. If you are married, congratulations. You have unlocked an entire new world of anxiety, which doctors assure you is a natural consequence of fulfilling your womanly duties, such as raising children, entertaining callers, and surviving another round of boiled mutton. But let's get to the medical side of things, where your symptoms, fatigue, anxiety, too much ambition, or simply a tendency to speak your mind, are instantly lumped under the vast umbrella of women's problems. There is no complaint too small or too absurd for a diagnosis. If you cry during poetry readings, can't sleep, dislike your new wallpaper, or feel existential dread every Tuesday, your condition is immediately classified as hysteria. Doctors, most of whom are baffled by the female anatomy but endlessly confident, nod wisely and make notes. Hysteria, they say, is caused by everything from reading novels, overexertion in embroidery, excessive thinking, or too little thinking. It's also blamed on tight corsets, not enough fresh air, wandering wombs, or simply the natural delicacy of the female constitution. The actual cause? Irrelevant. The important thing is that you now have a certified ailment. The treatment is an adventure in its own right. You might be sent for a rest cure, which involves reclining in a dark room, forbidden from reading, writing, or talking, attended by a nurse whose primary job is to glare at you when you try to sneak a peek at the newspaper. If you're unlucky, you may be subjected to a regime of ice baths, electric shocks, or, in extreme cases, being prescribed vigorous horseback riding. No one is sure if this is for the nerves or just the doctor's amusement. But for most, the answer is medication, generous spoonfuls of laudanum or chloral hydrate, administered at every sign of emotion. Having a feeling? Dose. Contemplating the universe? Double dose. Wondering why men never seem to get diagnosed with hysteria? Take the whole bottle. Your medicine cabinet becomes a shrine to Victorian pharmacology, stocked with enough opiates to make a modern pharmacist cry. Meanwhile, society expects you to perform your suffering with style. Delicate coughs are fashionable. Fainting is practically required at parties. and a general air of vague malaise is the mark of a true lady. Friends and neighbors compete over whose nerves are the most shattered, swapping stories about swooning at the opera or developing heart palpitations after a surprise visit from the postman. You're encouraged to keep a diary of your symptoms, mostly so future generations can marvel at the drama. Every so often, your doctor recommends a new treatment, like a trip to the seaside, a glass of wine at breakfast, or an afternoon spent inhaling the fumes of burning herbs. And if you recover, well, wasn't that just a little too quick? Suspicious. Maybe you need another rest. In Victorian England, the only thing more dangerous than being a woman with too many feelings was being a woman with too few. Your entire existence is a delicate balancing act between visible fragility and barely managed chaos. And if you ever feel like protesting, the doctor will see you now with another prescription. Congratulations, you're a textbook case. You're handed a small glass vial of laudanum, opium dissolved in alcohol, and told it will fix everything. Headache, insomnia, existential dread, take a sip. Toothache, take 2. Missing husband, maybe he took too much. The pharmacist presents the bottle with reverence, as if bestowing the Holy Grail. The label is charmingly vague, for the relief of all nervous complaints, and includes helpful instructions such as dose, as required, up to complete tranquility. The amber liquid glows menacingly in the gaslight. You pause, wondering if perhaps a brisk walk or a warm bath might help instead. But your doctor's orders are clear. Laudanum is the future, and the future is now. You are not alone in your newfound relationship with Victorian medicine's favorite magic potion. Everyone has a bottle tucked away. Mothers, matrons, maidens, the vicar's wife, the vicar, even children recovering from a restless disposition. Laudanum is prescribed for everything. Headaches, indigestion, melancholia, menstrual cramps, marital disappointment, gout, neuralgia, arthritis, and a generalized sense that life is simply too much. It's the Swiss Army knife of 19th century pharmaceuticals. Taking laudanum is almost ceremonial. You uncork the bottle, pour a few drops into your tarnished silver spoon, and swallow with the same solemnity reserved for Holy Communion. The taste is bitter, a blend of medicine cabinet and regret. Within minutes, the world seems softer, quieter, as though someone has politely dimmed reality. Your anxieties drift away like fog on the Thames. This is probably what Queen Victoria meant when she spoke of sweet tranquility. She forgot to mention the dry mouth. But you can always chase it with tea or more laudanum. Before long, you notice everyone around you has developed a new sense of possibility. Aunt Gwendolen, formerly so shy she once fainted at the word cabbage, is suddenly composing poetry and debating metaphysics with the postman. Your friend Mrs. Wainwright has rearranged her parlor 3 times this week and is currently crocheting a hat for her canary. Your neighbor's children, dosed liberally to stop their nervous fussiness, spend entire afternoons reciting nursery rhymes at the wallpaper. Laudanum brings the community together. Tea parties transform into dreamlike salons, where the conversation leaps from philosophy to nonsense in the space of a single biscuit. You begin to see the attraction. What could be better than a medicine that not only silences your nerves, but makes your relatives briefly interesting? But this miracle cure is not without its quirks. For one thing, the proper dosage is a mystery wrapped in guesswork. Take as needed quickly becomes take as much as will fit in the spoon. Soon, your definition of need expands. Rough morning? Dose. Boring dinner? Dose. Husband home late again? Double dose. Plus a small glass for the dog. Strangely, you notice that everyone has become both more creative and, in the evenings, a bit more unpredictable. Letters are written with wild, looping penmanship. Diary entries become operatic in their emotional intensity. And your neighbor, Mrs. Fitch, is convinced her sofa is haunted. The town grows livelier, or perhaps just stranger. Eventually, you begin to wonder about the side effects. You ask the doctor if it's normal to dream in vivid technicolor, or to spend an hour pondering the inner life of a bread roll. He assures you that you are simply experiencing the full benefits of modern science. More importantly, he says, you seem less anxious, and that's all that really matters. Congratulations, you've discovered the miracle of laudanum, a cure for everything, especially boredom. And if you forget your troubles, your name, or where you put the cat, well, that's just science in action. It doesn't take long before you realize this cure has some surprising effects. Boundless energy, deep philosophical insights, and the urge to monologue about the nature of tablecloths. Your diary entries are now unreadable, but very entertaining. After just a few weeks on your prescribed dose of laudanum, the world becomes a place of bright possibilities and truly questionable decisions. You find yourself waking at odd hours with a sudden need to rearrange the silverware or recite Wordsworth to your potted fern. Mornings begin with a spirited internal debate about the metaphysical implications of lemon curd. Your handwriting grows more flamboyant and less legible. Shopping lists are now riddled with cryptic side notes. Remember, inquire about the price of invisible gloves, consult the cat on the question of destiny. And your letters to relatives require a glossary. You are not alone. Your social circle is becoming the very definition of lively. At tea, the conversation veers from animated speculation about the afterlife. I believe my aunt's parlor chair contains the soul of a minor Greek philosopher, to plans for ambitious household projects. Your neighbor, once so sensible, is suddenly determined to paint her sitting room fire opal and embroider inspirational verses on every available cushion. She claims it's for the good of her nerves. The family is unconvinced but afraid to argue. Some days, the side effects are merely whimsical. You find yourself consumed by an urgent need to alphabetize the pantry or compose a 17-stanza epic about the emotional journey of a hat stand. You might write a letter to your doctor asking if it is normal to feel a kinship with hedgehogs. Other days, it's mania, hours spent furiously scrubbing the stair rails, followed by a vigorous defense of your choice to name each individual baluster. The dog, previously a model of patience, now hides under the settee whenever you approach with a new lecture on the hidden symbolism of soup. At first, family members are cautiously supportive. A little extra energy, they reason, is a small price to pay for relief from the all-consuming vapors. But soon, your bursts of creativity start to worry them. Your husband awakens in the night to the sound of your rapid-fire piano improvisations, a piece you call Ode to the Mystical Mustard Pot. The children, dosed with their own tonic for nerves, have started constructing scale models of the Crystal Palace out of biscuit tins and string. The effects extend beyond your home. At church, you surprise everyone by volunteering to lead the choir in a rousing, entirely original hymn about darning socks. In the bakery, you develop a passionate argument with the baker about the moral responsibility of bread. The local vicar, previously unflappable, quietly schedules more frequent home visits just to check in. Sometimes, however, there is a shadow side to all this exuberance. There are days when your thoughts race too quickly, when ideas crowd each other out, and your hands shake as you attempt to embroider philosophical questions onto your nightdress. Sleep grows elusive. You lie awake composing poetry by gaslight or plotting the ideal arrangement of every chair in the house. The walls close in, patterned with the consequences of yesterday's wallpaper enthusiasm. Still, no one dares mention the word addiction. It is unthinkable that something so thoroughly modern and widely praised could have a downside. If the doctor prescribes it, it must be healthy. If the Queen herself approves, who are you to question it? Congratulations. You have entered the high-octane phase of Victorian self-improvement, where your nerves are soothed, your mind is racing, and your sitting room is now the color of existential optimism. And tomorrow, you might paint it again. You shuffle into the local apothecary. Shelves groan under the weight of bottles promising to cure anything from sadness to nerves. Every remedy contains a shocking amount of alcohol, mercury, or something that glows in the dark. The shop bell tinkles overhead as you step into an olfactory onslaught of camphor, linseed oil, and the faint but unmistakable tang of hope. The pharmacist greets you from behind the counter, adjusting his spectacles, beard as full and unkempt as a hedgerow in spring. You glance around. Every square inch of the place is packed. Large blue glass bottles glimmer on high shelves. Rows of labeled drawers boast mysterious contents: dragon's blood, powdered skullcap, essence of euphoria, and beneath the counter lies a wooden chest whose only key is kept on a chain. Close to the pharmacist's heart, the menu of cures is less scientific, more spiritual journey. There is a potion for nerves, a syrup for sadness, a tonic for spleenishness, and powders for anything that might afflict the human soul. Some mixtures promise to make you sleep. Others vow to wake you up, or possibly both at the same time. The only thing they have in common: they're dispensed with a wink and the assurance that all the best families use this. You approach the counter, clutching your doctor's prescription, a masterpiece of indecipherable handwriting and casual optimism. The pharmacist barely glances at it before springing into action. He selects a bottle at random, gives it a shake, the liquid inside fizzes ominously, and proceeds to add a few pinches of something powdery and a generous splash of spirits. He tops it off with a sprig of something green, perhaps for health, perhaps for garnish. You'll want to take this with food, he advises solemnly, or on an empty stomach if you wish for faster results. You nod, not entirely sure which of your problems you're supposed to solve first. Is it the melancholy, the headache, or the creeping suspicion that your furniture is whispering? As you wait, a parade of customers comes and goes. A weary mother requests a syrup to calm her infant's night terrors, code for teething. The local vicar picks up a bottle of fortifying spirits, swearing it's for the bell ringer. A gentleman in a top hat wants something discreet for digestive irregularity. The pharmacist nods, dispenses, and occasionally offers advice that sounds suspiciously like a recipe for punch. Some of the potions are classics. There's Godfrey's cordial, opium and treacle, Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup for babies with enough morphine to fell a horse, and a mysterious remedy labeled Dr. Grimble's electric elixir, which glows faintly in the dark and may or may not have actual electricity in it. Mercury pills are still in fashion, though their effects are mostly limited to spectacular tooth loss and fits of enthusiasm. For the more modern-minded, there's Vin Mariani, a French wine laced with cocaine, beloved by the Pope and anyone needing to redecorate the house in a single afternoon. The shelf is also stocked with patent medicines that promise to banish all female complaints, invigorate the blood, or, if nothing else, provide a brief and dazzling escape from the realities of Victorian plumbing. You leave the pharmacy laden with bottles, packets, powders, and possibly a new outlook on life, or at least a temporary sense of invincibility. The instructions are simple. Dose as needed. Ignore the warnings. And above all, don't ask what's actually inside. Welcome to the Victorian pharmacy, where the cure for your troubles might be just a sip away, and the side effects are simply a matter for tomorrow. In a world filled with mystery remedies, uncertainty is half the fun. Soon, you notice everyone in your social circle carries their own special flask, hidden in their reticule or up a ruffled sleeve. Addiction isn't shameful, it's practically a hobby. At first, it's subtle. A friend dabs her lips with a scented handkerchief. then discreetly sips from a tiny glass vial before returning to her embroidery. The vicar's wife develops a sudden fascination with peppermint drops, except the drops are 40% opium by volume. Even the family dog seems more relaxed these days, thanks to a suspiciously cheerful veterinarian and soothing syrup administered at the slightest sign of canine anxiety. The strange thing about Victorian drug use is just how ordinary it becomes. Laudanum and its friends are not relegated to dark corners or whispered rumors. They are celebrated, recommended, and, most of all, shared. Children are sent to the chemist to fetch more medicine for mother, and come home with bottles in brown paper, humming nursery rhymes and stopping to sniff the contents for good luck. Social events take on a new energy. Afternoon tea is suddenly less about the Earl Grey and more about who's added what to their cup. Mrs. Stroud, usually the model of decorum, spends half the party explaining her new theory about the psychic properties of rhubarb. Someone always has a cold, a headache, or a vague case of the wobblies. Miraculously, there's always a remedy at hand. Bottles are passed with the same casual intimacy as gossip. Try this, dear. It did wonders for my husband's lumbago, also his sense of humor. You quickly realize that addiction, in this era, comes dressed as refinement. The bottles themselves are works of art. Etched crystal, delicately labeled, topped with ornate stoppers. Collecting them becomes a mark of sophistication. Nothing says cultured like a shelf lined with apothecary glass and faded patent medicine adverts. There are even etiquette rules for consumption. Never swig directly from the bottle, always decant with care, and never, under any circumstances, admit that you finished the entire tincture before supper. There's a hierarchy to the habits. The truly elite prefer their nerve tonics, imported from France or Switzerland. Ideally something with a dash of cocaine for that continental flair. The rest make do with whatever the local pharmacist can conjure up, sometimes enhanced with a splash of sherry or a cube of sugar to mask the bitterness. Regardless of source, everyone is united in the pursuit of that blissful feeling, calm, composed, and just detached enough to tolerate another evening of Victorian small talk. Addiction is not a secret. It is a sort of open secret, the punchline to 100 polite jokes. Oh, Mrs. Pendleton, always so animated, must be her new cordial. No one uses the word addict. Instead, ladies are delicate, gentlemen are overwrought, and children are simply spirited. Even the medical establishment is in on it, with doctors doling out fresh prescriptions as eagerly as confectioners hand out peppermints. Still, there are warning signs, quick tempers, missed appointments, a sudden urge to redecorate the entire house in shades of lunatic mauve. But these are waved away as quirks of personality, not symptoms. If anyone disappears for a few days, it's assumed they're taking the waters or recovering from nerves. There are no interventions, only sympathy and the occasional recommendation for a change of scenery. By the end of your first month, you too have a favorite blend, a preferred bottle, and a carefully rehearsed story about its necessity. You fit in perfectly. In Victorian England, addiction is less a failing than a fashionable pastime, an accessory that matches any dress, and a secret shared by all. Congratulations, you're not just medicated, you're part of the club. Why do so many homes feature a fainting couch? Because half the population is either coming down from a morphine bender or experiencing the crushing existential horror of Tuesday. Furniture stores are thriving. Every respectable Victorian parlour has one. A low, swooping chaise upholstered in velvet, brocade, or whatever fabric most closely resembles an opium dream. The fainting couch is the centerpiece, the conversation starter, and the designated landing pad for anyone overcome by nerves, gossip, or the after effects of a little too much tincture. It's as if interior designers collectively decided, we need something stylish for people to collapse on, preferably somewhere with good acoustics for melodramatic sighs. You are expected to use the fainting couch as often as possible, preferably in public. Social etiquette dictates that whenever you feel lightheaded, which, given your current pharmaceutical intake, is often, you must make your way to the couch, arrange yourself in an artistically limp pose, and await a rescue party. Bonus points if you can clutch a lace handkerchief to your forehead while muttering something about the heat, the wallpaper, or the mysterious sadness of spoons. If you're the hostess, your fainting couch must be positioned for maximum visibility, ideally within eavesdropping distance of both the piano and the tea service, so you never miss a scandal or a fresh pot of Earl Grey. Visitors take turns draping themselves across the couch, comparing ailments and exchanging tips about the best tonics for emotional congestion. No one actually asks what's in the medicine bottle, they just hope it pairs well with biscuits. The presence of a fainting couch in every home is not simply decorative, it's a public health necessity. After all, Victorian doctors routinely prescribe medicines that turn the act of standing up too quickly into a high-stakes gamble. One moment you're holding forth on the merits of boiled beef, the next you're seeing stars, the room spins, and gravity makes its point. Your friends murmur sympathetically and offer smelling salts, which contain just enough ammonia to make you question all your life choices. Fainting is more than a bodily function. It's practically a social ritual. A swoon well-timed can end an awkward conversation, earn you a compliment, or even get you out of an impromptu poetry reading. There is a fine art to the faint, too subtle and you miss your moment, too dramatic. And someone might call the doctor, who will invariably recommend more laudanum and a change of scenery, possibly as far as Bath. Children learn early, little girls perfect their swooning technique for the schoolroom. Teenage boys pretend to faint in church to escape sermons. Even the dog has figured out that lying dramatically across the chaise guarantees extra attention and, if it's a good day, a spoonful of soothing syrup. Of course, there are side effects. Too much swooning and you risk becoming a parlour fixture, indistinguishable from the other overstuffed furniture. Guests occasionally forget you're there and use your feet as a convenient spot to rest a tea tray. Still, it's better than sitting upright and pretending you care about Colonel Weatherby's account of the great umbrella shortage of '68. By evening, the fainting couch is the most popular seat in the house. If it could talk, it would have endless tales of whispered secrets, spontaneous verse, midnight laughter, and the unspoken competition to see who can collapse with the most flair. Congratulations. You're living in a golden age of comfort, pharmaceuticals, and public displays of fragility. The fainting couch isn't just furniture, it's a way of life. Swoon away. It's not just you. The women at your weekly tea party are giggling uncontrollably, reciting Byron, and arguing passionately about the philosophical implications of marmalade. No one remembers how the conversation started, or why the cat is wearing a bonnet. Tea parties in Victorian England are not the sedate, porcelain-clinking affairs you might expect. They are raucous, swirling carnivals of emotion, minor chaos, and thinly veiled chemical experimentation. The table groans under the weight of cakes, buns, finger sandwiches, and at least 4 different types of medicinal cordial, all passed with an air of conspiratorial glee. You take your seat, already anticipating the afternoon's mixture of refined socializing and mild delirium. As the tea flows, so do the remedies. Bottles are slipped from reticules and discreetly added to teacups under the table. Just a drop, dear. It does wonders for conversation, Mrs. Pomeroy assures you, her eyes a little too bright, her laughter coming in waves. There are whispered debates about which tincture pairs best with Battenberg cake, and a running joke about how nobody actually knows where the marmalade came from or who keeps refilling it. Before long, the mood shifts from gentle gossip to euphoric confessional. Someone launches into a poem about the tragic love life of a teapot. Another lady begins a treatise on the political symbolism of scones, which soon devolves into giggles as Mrs. Ashbury, usually so composed, insists her bun is staring at her with a judgmental expression. Even the family cat gets involved, emerging from behind the sofa in an outfit that suggests he's auditioning for a Dickens play. The beauty of the Victorian tea party is its permissive energy. No one judges you for losing the thread of a conversation or monologuing about the relative intelligence of hedgehogs. Lapses in memory are simply a side effect of creative thinking. If a guest forgets her own name or begins reciting the multiplication table out of order, it's chalked up to nerves, inspiration, or possibly the special herbal blend provided by the local chemist. Topics bounce wildly around the table. 1 minute, you're discussing the Queen's latest hairstyle. The next, you're embroiled in a heated debate about whether ghosts have a preferred type of jam. Mrs. Hargreaves, always ready with a new theory, claims her uncle once saw a ghost in the pantry, but only after he sampled the elixir for neuralgia. The group nods wisely, each privately wondering if their own cupboards might be haunted by similar spectres. Inevitably, someone makes a dramatic exit to the fainting couch after laughing too hard at a particularly absurd pun. She is revived with smelling salts and another small glass of medicinal wine, because in Victorian England, recovery always includes more of what caused the episode. This is, after all, an era that believes the answer to every ailment is either rest or a second helping. The laughter continues well into the afternoon. Cups clink, plates rattle, and a cake is ceremonially declared too philosophical to eat. By the end, no one is quite sure what was discussed, who won the marmalade debate, or why the curtains have been tied into what looks suspiciously like a noose. But everyone agrees it was a most invigorating gathering, one to be repeated, just as soon as someone remembers whose house they're in. Congratulations, you've survived a Victorian tea party, a tempest of sugar, stimulants, and surreal conversations. Don't forget your bottle on the way out. And if you find the cat's hat, please return it to the piano. The next party will be even livelier. Bedtime means lining up the medicine bottles on your nightstand, measuring out your dose by candlelight, and hoping you don't mistake the sleeping draught for the hair tonic. The good news, you'll probably sleep. The bad news, it might be for several days. As dusk settles and the coal fires are banked for the night, the household shifts into ritual mode. Sleep, in Victorian England, is a formidable adversary, a beast to be tamed with discipline, faith, and a generous helping of chemistry. You enter your bedroom, greeted by the comforting clutter of personal effects, a silver brush set, a stack of well-thumbed novels, and, of course, a small armory of bottles, vials, and mysterious jars. If a modern pharmacist wandered in, they'd have heart palpitations at the sight. You begin with the essentials. There's the laudanum for the nerves, a dram of chloral hydrate for deep relaxation, and, for those with restless legs, a tonic so strong it's rumored to subdue horses. Each bottle bears a label written in exquisite, nearly illegible script. Soothing drops, to be taken as needed. Gentle sedative, not to exceed 3 doses, or 4 if agitated, and Mrs. Hargreaves' celebrated sleep cordial, guaranteed to work eventually. Measuring the doses is a delicate operation. The light of the bedside candle flickers dangerously as you squint at the meniscus in your tiny glass. You make a silent vow to yourself. Tonight, no more than 3 drops of anything. And definitely not whatever Aunt Maud left here last Christmas. The memory of last week's incident when you accidentally dosed yourself with liniment and dreamed of speaking fluent Portuguese, still lingers. As you prepare your nightly cocktail, you hear similar preparations in the rooms below. The distant clinking of glass, a cough, the sigh of someone settling into bed with a bottle of nightcap gin. The servants are not immune. The cook swears by her camphorated sherry, the butler his digestive brandy, and even the dog receives a spoonful of soothing syrup, lest his dreams become too vivid. Bedtime is a social event in itself. Family members drift between rooms, exchanging advice on the best combination of potions. Your cousin insists that mixing the purple drops with a sip of sloe gin brings on the most refreshing slumber. Grandmother claims her sleep improved dramatically after adding a teaspoon of port to her elixir, though she hasn't woken up before noon in weeks. Once settled in bed, the effects begin their slow, inevitable march. First comes the sensation of gentle detachment, as if the mattress has grown wings and you are drifting down the Thames, past all the day's worries and most of your short-term memory. You try to read, but the words swim on the page, pirouetting in a blurry ballet of half-formed thoughts. The candle sputters, you close your eyes. Dreams arrive, vivid and nonsensical. One night, you're dining with the Queen. The next, you're arguing with a carrot about the meaning of life. Sometimes you wake up unsure of where or who you are. Wasn't this pillow blue yesterday? And whose boots are those by the window? If you do manage to wake in the night, the solution is obvious. Another dose, a sip of gin, perhaps a quick prayer for dreamless sleep. In the Victorian era, insomnia isn't a problem. It's a market opportunity. Congratulations, you've survived the bedtime gauntlet, slipping gently into chemically assisted oblivion. Sleep well, just not too well. Tomorrow is another day, and your bottles will be waiting. Your husband, increasingly confused, tries to keep up with your moods. Is it the medicine, the moon, or are you just bored of his stories about the Crimean War? Welcome to the uniquely Victorian predicament of the respectable English gentleman, married to a woman whose personality, once as steady as his morning kippers, now swings between poetic rhapsodies and impromptu fainting spells, often within the same hour. He remembers a time when your greatest eccentricity was a fondness for collecting teaspoons. Now, he tiptoes through the house in fear of interrupting your latest monologue on the spiritual symbolism of asparagus. The problem, as far as he can see, is that the age of science has ushered in an avalanche of remedies, tonics, and cures for the female constitution. These bottles, vials, and powders have become your closest confidantes. He's noticed that your daily routine consists of tea, tonic, a nap, a dramatic sigh on the fainting couch, another tonic, some piano, a brief existential crisis, and perhaps a final tonic for luck. Even the cat seems to have been caught in the crossfire, sporting a slightly glazed look after licking a stray drop of Mrs. Pennington's universal elixir. Men in this era are encouraged to maintain a stiff upper lip, but lately your husband's is beginning to twitch. At the club, he whispers anxiously to other married men about your newfound interest in midnight curtain lectures and the occasional unprovoked waltz around the dining table. Is it the laudanum, he asks, or just the way of things? His friends nod with the grave solemnity of those who have seen too much. Each offers their own theory. Perhaps you need a change of scenery. Perhaps you should take up archery. Or perhaps it's time for a brisk sea voyage. One way, if necessary. The medical profession is no help. The family doctor, proud of his walrus mustache and ambiguous diagnoses, assures your husband that everything is perfectly normal. Just a touch of nerves, my good man. Give her this. He hands over a bottle with a label so faded it might as well say, "Try your luck." If anything, The doctor seems more excited about the case than concerned, jotting down notes for his next paper on unpredictable female hysteria and the role of tinctures in social harmony. Of course, your husband attempts his own interventions. He reads aloud from the newspaper, hoping the exchange rates or parliamentary debates will restore you to your former equilibrium. You respond by asking the sofa its opinion on the corn laws. He suggests a quiet walk in the park. You bring the neighbor's goose for company. He encourages more wholesome activities, like charity work or flower arranging. You, inspired by your latest restorative, volunteer to organize a séance in the cellar. Every so often, he questions his own sanity. Is this just married life? Or has his beloved become an alchemical experiment gone awry? He consults the butler, the cook, and even the gardener, all of whom are unfazed. It's the times, sir, they say. Everyone's a bit peculiar. He considers seeking advice from the vicar. But after witnessing the vicar's wife attempt to communicate with the wallpaper, he thinks better of it. In the end, your husband learns to adapt. He develops a fondness for evening strolls, alone. He becomes skilled at dodging impromptu poetry recitals and grows to appreciate the fainting couch as a place of refuge. If not for you, then for his own frayed nerves. Congratulations. In Victorian England, the gentleman's dilemma isn't how to understand women, it's how to keep up with them, one tonic at a time. It's 2 a.m. The only thing louder than your creative improvisations on greensleeves is your impromptu rant about the oppressive nature of corsetry. Victorian walls are thin, and so is everyone's patience. Somewhere in the murky depths of laudanum-fueled inspiration, you have decided that sleep is for the unimaginative. The piano, ignored for months except during forced family recitals, now beckons like a lighthouse in the fog of your nightly routine. You slide onto the bench, candle flickering, and allow your fingers to dance across the keys in what can only be described as a spontaneous symphony, half Chopin, half cat walking on a harpsichord. The house reacts in stages. At first, there's denial. Perhaps it's just the wind, or an unusually tuneful mouse. But as your melody grows louder and more experimental, now incorporating the lid of the biscuit tin and some enthusiastic foot stomping, the servants stir. The dog, who has long since stopped caring about your eccentricities, burrows deeper under the fainting couch. Your husband, dreaming of tranquil Swiss lakes, bolts upright, convinced there is a marching band in the corridor. By the third verse of your newly composed nocturne for nerves and discordant bass, the neighbors are wide awake. Victorian houses, built for style but not for soundproofing, are notorious for amplifying both secrets and sonatas. Mrs. Giles next door, who prides herself on never missing a parish rumour, listens with equal parts horror and fascination as you segue into a passionate improvisation titled Ode to the Tyranny of Pinafores. The milkman, making his early rounds, pauses outside your window, quietly adding Avoid house number 14 before sunrise to his mental list. You are, by this point, thoroughly enjoying yourself. Each new melody is a rebellion against the stifling order of daylight hours. The piano becomes your confessor, your battle cry, your loyal friend, in a world determined to keep women's voices small and their passions tidy. You pause occasionally to sip your soothing cordial, guaranteed by your doctor to promote relaxation, though the label does not specify for whom. Sometimes you stop playing and launch into philosophical musings, delivered in a stage whisper to your imagined audience. Last night, it was the morality of rhubarb jam. Tonight, the inherent injustice of corset boning. Imagine, you intone dramatically, a world where we are free to breathe, to move, to choose our own bedtime. From somewhere above, a neighbor thumps on the floor, whether in agreement or protest, you can't say. Eventually, someone attempts diplomacy. A servant appears at the door with a gentle suggestion that perhaps you might try playing something quieter. You nod, then immediately launch into a thunderous finale. Artistic integrity knows no curfew. By sunrise, you are spent, slumped over the keys, content in the knowledge that you have expressed yourself to the fullest. The neighborhood, less enthusiastic, begins its day with puffy eyes, mysterious headaches, and a new appreciation for silence. Over breakfast, you hear whispers. Did you hear her last night? But there is a grudging respect. Not everyone can turn Rule Britannia into a 12-minute improvisational fugue featuring the washboard and the neighbor's disgruntled cat. Congratulations, you've brought art, energy, and mild insomnia to your street. In Victorian England, the night is yours, the piano is your stage, and the neighbors will recover, eventually. Or they'll invest in thicker curtains. Either way, you're making history, one nocturne at a time. Somehow, society convinces itself that all of this is perfectly proper. After all, the Queen herself uses special drops for her nerves. If it's good enough for royalty, it's good enough for your neighbor's 10-year-old. It's a strange moment in history when public health and private vice walk arm in arm down the street, corseted, buttoned, and utterly convinced of their own righteousness. Laudanum, morphine, bromide, and patent nerve tonics are not merely tolerated, they are celebrated as markers of modern virtue. There are advertisements in the newspaper, testimonials from upstanding citizens, and even magazine columns devoted to choosing the right cordial for your constitution. Every parlor contains at least 3 bottles, one discreetly labeled for nerves, another for sleep, and a third for emergencies that can strike at any time, usually before breakfast. In this environment, the boundary between respectable and reckless blurs so thoroughly that no one dares question it. A woman who abstains from tonics is regarded with suspicion. She must be hiding something, whispers Mrs. Frobisher as she stirs a double dose into her tea. Or worse, she has nothing to be nervous about. Unnatural. Children are dosed for fidgeting, husbands for fatigue, grandmothers for the melancholies, and no one is left out. Even the maid gets a tonic if she looks too cheerful. Equal opportunity medication is, after all, the height of civilization. Moralists in the pulpit thunder against intemperance. Mainly gin, occasionally gambling, but never the family bottle of laudanum. The logic is simple. A substance, when prescribed, blessed, and marketed by men in frock coats, cannot possibly be sinful. Temperance societies campaign furiously against public drunkenness, but make an exception for Mrs. Merton's fortifying drops, even as she tells the butcher the meat is singing to her again. This is not vice. This is progress. Pharmaceutical companies are only too happy to reinforce the message. Every box of pills is stamped with a promise of moral improvement, brings calm and Christian decorum to the home, proclaims the latest advert for Mellow's medicated elixir, recommended by clergymen and 2 out of 3 earls. If a lady of means appears slightly manic at the garden party, she is admired for her vigor. If she collapses in the shrubbery, it is chalked up to the immense pressure of modern virtue. The Queen herself, remote but ever present, is both trendsetter and cautionary tale. Her rumoured use of special drops is a source of comfort to the public and a convenient explanation for any royal eccentricities. If Her Majesty needs a nightly cordial, so too do the masses. As a result, entire families gather in the evening to take their prescribed virtue in a bottle, toasting to another day survived in good spirits, and with just enough mania to keep things interesting. Underneath it all, the moral scaffolding of the era is held up by pure denial and clever branding. The symptoms of overindulgence, restlessness, feverish creativity, unprovoked weeping, the urge to recite Tennyson at dinner, are not seen as side effects but as proof that you are, at heart, a person of deep feeling and spiritual refinement. A good Victorian never admits to addiction, only to being deeply affected by the world's troubles. Congratulations! You are living in a society where mania is proof of moral fiber, where chemistry is character, and where a little bottle by the bed is the highest badge of respectability. In this world, virtue and vice taste remarkably similar, and come with a handy measuring spoon. Children are prescribed the same tonics as adults, sometimes in smaller doses, sometimes not. Little Percy is currently reciting Shakespeare and attempting to climb the wallpaper. If you thought the Victorian approach to medicine was dubious for adults, wait until you see the pediatric protocol. Here, the phrase child-proof means nothing. Bottles of soothing syrup, nerve tonic, and cordial are kept within easy reach, often right next to the sweets, the sewing basket, and the family Bible. Any child with a sniffle, a tantrum, or too much energy is swiftly administered a spoonful of whatever concoction mother or nurse finds most convenient, or, failing that, whatever is closest to hand. The leading favorite? Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup, sold everywhere from apothecaries to corner shops, famous for its sweet taste and gentle ability to render children both docile and conveniently unconscious. The secret? A blend of morphine, alcohol, and enough sugar to jumpstart a beehive. Advertisements proudly declare, "Children cry for it," which is both a promise and a warning. Other remedies crowd the nursery shelf. Godfrey's cordial, Dalby's carminative, and an endless parade of cough syrups, sleeping drops, and calming powders all jostle for attention. If it's got a flowery Victorian label and promises to soothe the little ones, it's probably packed with more narcotics than a modern pharmacy would dare put behind a lock. Dosing is an art form, calculated less by weight or age than by mood, intuition, and whether mother has already had her afternoon tonic. The effects are dramatic. At playdates, children alternate between bursts of wild creativity and sudden, inexplicable naps. Hide and seek occasionally ends when someone falls asleep in the coal scuttle. The household is quieter, but only because half the population is exploring dreamland on a chemical cloud. When awake, young Victorians have the literary energy of a caffeinated poet, composing rhymes, reenacting naval battles, and reciting chunks of the King James Bible in voices that would frighten an exorcist. If there's a downside to all this early self-medication, no one mentions it. In fact, a robust tolerance for patent medicines is considered a sign of good breeding. Grandparents boast about their childhood doses. We survived on a teaspoon of laudanum and shoe polish every morning, and mothers compete over who has the calmest, sleepiest child. Teachers are grateful. Discipline is easier when students are too drowsy to rebel. The only drawback, a slightly higher rate of students sleepwalking through math lessons or weeping gently at the sight of a chalkboard. Children, being both adaptable and observant, learn to use the system to their advantage. A well-timed sniffle can earn an extra dose of the good stuff. Some try to barter with siblings, trading chores for sips of the tastier medicines. Others go rogue, sneaking samples when adults aren't looking. It's not uncommon to catch young Percy standing on a chair in the pantry, eyeing the bottle of syrup like a pirate on the hunt for treasure. Of course, accidents happen. A bottle spills, a dose is doubled, a particularly spirited child attempts to mix his own remedy for imaginary ailments. The result? A frantic call for the doctor, who prescribes what else? More of the same, but with a warning to administer only as needed and not before supper. In Victorian England, childhood is a chemical experiment. supervised by loving adults with absolute faith in the power of modern medicine. No child-proof caps, no warning labels, no fear, just a cupboard full of colorful bottles and the hope that everyone wakes up in time for dinner. Congratulations, you're raising the next generation of poets, dreamers, and amateur pharmacists. Sleep tight, little ones, just as soon as your tonic kicks in. When the pharmacy runs out, there's always the local opium den. A smoky room filled with poets, gamblers, and at least one lady from the church choir. It's less den of sin, more book club, but everyone's horizontal. You hear whispers of the place from friends and relatives, usually after the third cup of tea or second glass of medicinal sherry. Of course, one never visits, your aunt says, glancing meaningfully at the piano. But if one did, purely out of curiosity, of course, it would be quite an education. In reality, everyone seems to know someone who accidentally spent the afternoon there, emerging dreamy-eyed and reeking of incense, convinced they had unlocked the secret of happiness or, at minimum, the plot of the next sensational penny dreadful. You find yourself outside a nondescript door in a shadowy alley, heart beating a little faster. The only sign is a painted red lantern, swaying gently in the fog. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with sweet, spicy smoke, exotic rugs, and the gentle clink of porcelain pipes. Conversation drifts in and out of English, sometimes French, sometimes something that might be Sanskrit, or might just be someone trying to remember the name of their own hat. The clientele is a delightful cross-section of Victorian society. City clerks, bored aristocrats, nervous poets, and a surprising number of middle-aged women with impressive bonnets all mingle without the usual rules of social hierarchy. Here, you are nobody and everybody. Shoes are optional, laughter is spontaneous, and the only urgent appointment is with the next pipe. The den's proprietor, a calm and mysterious figure known only as Mr. Ling, moves silently through the haze, dispensing wisdom, matches, and the occasional philosophical riddle. Smoke, and you will see what is hidden, he tells you, as if you haven't already spent the day lost in visions from your latest prescription. You recline on a faded velvet cushion, watching as the smoke swirls overhead, turning gaslights into stars. A young poet, possibly named Percy, possibly named Charlotte, declares that he can hear colors. The lady from the church choir recites psalms, then bursts into laughter at a joke only she can hear. Someone in the corner is writing the world's longest letter to Queen Victoria, mostly comprised of doodles and lines from Shakespeare. The atmosphere is calm, contemplative, and just a little bit magical. You briefly consider starting a book club here. Everyone seems to have plenty of ideas and no inclination to argue. Outside, the world is strict and judgmental. Here, nothing is forbidden except seriousness. Tea is served constantly, sometimes with biscuits, sometimes with stories. Someone plays a sitar in the corner. Or maybe it's just the wind whistling through the pipes. Every so often, a nervous newcomer asks if this is dangerous, immoral, or likely to end up in the local paper. The regulars wave away such concerns. Dangerous is arguing with Mrs. Harper about scone recipes, someone mutters. This is just Tuesday. Besides, everyone insists it's not real addiction if you're sitting on a pillow and quoting Milton. When you finally leave, the world feels softer, dreamier, and less urgent. The alley seems a little less menacing, the air a little sweeter. You might not remember all the conversations, but you do recall feeling, for a brief time, perfectly at ease. Congratulations! You've discovered the Victorian opium den, not a pit of vice, but a refuge for the over-medicated and the mildly poetic. Just another way to get by. Horizontal, hazy, and happily out of the rain. Feeling a bit off? Time for a spring cleanse. Just add more opium, a little mercury, and possibly a light bloodletting to keep things fresh. Victorians are nothing if not devoted to the idea of self-improvement through suffering, and nowhere is this more evident than in their approach to health detox. If you mention to your doctor that you're feeling sluggish, out of sorts, or simply tired of the wallpaper, you'll find yourself signed up for a full program of restorative torment. Detox, Victorian style, is less smoothie and a yoga class, and more survive several questionable medical interventions and call it a personal victory. The first stage is usually a purge, an attempt to rid the body of mysterious impurities that, your doctor assures you, are the cause of all modern ailments. The prescription is equal parts aggressive and alarming. Start with a bracing dose of castor oil or rhubarb root, guaranteed to set the bowels in motion. No one is sure what comes out, but everyone agrees you feel lighter afterward, mostly because you're too exhausted to stand. Next comes the bloodletting. A quick visit from the local barber surgeon, yes, he also cuts hair, and you're reclining in a chair with a bowl under your arm, waiting to be relieved of a pint or two of bad blood. He assures you that all the best families do it, especially in spring, when the humours are at their most unruly. The only real question is whether you'll faint before or after he applies the leeches. If you do faint, congratulations, it's considered a positive sign. Bonus points if you do so gracefully, on the fainting couch. But cleansing is not just about losing blood. It's about gaining perspective. After a restorative nap, you're encouraged to begin a course of tonic pills, a medley of mercury, antimony, and, if you're truly in need, arsenic. A little poison sharpens the constitution, says the family physician, eyeing you over his gold-rimmed spectacles. You take his word for it, because by now you're too light-headed to argue. Of course, no cleanse would be complete without the pièce de résistance. More opium. Laudanum is added liberally to everything. Tea, lemonade, milk, bath water, ensuring that even as your body rebels, your mind remains blissfully unconcerned. By the second day, you are both cleansed and slightly outside the boundaries of linear time. The family wonders if you are coming down with something or embarking on a spiritual journey. The cat, sensing opportunity, steals your place on the fainting couch. Even food is involved in this relentless pursuit of purity. Broths are boiled until they resemble pale water. Bread is twice staled for digestive tranquility. And the only seasoning allowed is a pinch of virtue. You long for a forbidden apple or, at the very least, a cup of tea without added pharmaceuticals. Meanwhile, your friends send you notes of encouragement, along with recipes for the best pickled onions to aid the flow of humours. By the end of the week, you emerge from your detox a changed person. Your cheeks are paler, your clothes a bit looser, and your outlook on Victorian medicine now tinged with existential skepticism. But you're assured by everyone, doctor, family, even the postman, that you look cleansed, which is Victorian for vaguely haunted but polite. Congratulations. You've survived the Great Victorian Cleanse, where detox means more medicine, less food, and a healthy new respect for modern vitamins. Time to celebrate with a restorative dose of laudanum. When the supply runs low, or the doctor decides you've had quite enough, expect a week of sweating, hallucinations, and insisting the lamp is plotting against you. Victorian England, so skilled at the art of getting people hooked, is surprisingly unprepared for the aftermath. There is no 12-step program, no helpful pamphlet titled, "So You've Lost Your Laudanum." There is only the dark night of the soul, a 7-day ordeal spent shivering under too many quilts, clutching a chamber pot and staring at the wallpaper until it moves. It starts with a vague sense of unease. You wake to find the medicine cabinet distressingly empty, your secret bottles all lined up like tiny glass tombstones. Panic sets in. You beg the housemaid to pop round to the chemist, but she returns empty-handed. "Supply issues," she says, eyes darting with the guilt of someone who has almost certainly borrowed your last syrup for her own nerves. By the end of the first day, the physical symptoms arrive: the chills, the sweats, the sense that every muscle has been replaced by agitated jelly. You develop a feverish relationship with your water jug. Food holds no appeal. Even the classic Victorian comfort food, cold-boiled beef, can't tempt you. The household grows used to the sound of you moaning through several layers of counterpane, periodically shouting things like, "Bring me my cordial," or "Tell the wallpaper to stop watching me." On the second day, the hallucinations begin. At first, it's little things. The clock ticking backwards, the family portrait winking. By midnight, you are convinced the bedposts are discussing your shortcomings. The oil lamp in the corner morphs into a Victorian judge, silently condemning your choice of pajamas. At one point, you apologize to your slippers for being emotionally distant. If anyone dares visit, you regale them with a dramatic reading of your symptoms, performed in the style of Hamlet. By day 3, your family has accepted that you are, for the time being, indisposed. The doctor visits, tut-tuts, and prescribes rest, weak tea, and, if possible, less drama. You hear him conspiring with your spouse in the hallway. She'll come through it. Might do her good to sweat it out. Builds character. The maid delivers weak broth and reassuring platitudes, but keeps a safe distance, wary of your tendency to discuss philosophy with the curtains. Day 4 is a blur of insomnia and existential dread. Every shadow in the room becomes a potential threat. You decide the wallpaper pattern is a secret code sent from the continent, and spend several hours trying to decode it before giving up and falling into a dreamless nap. The dog visits, curls up by the bed, and listens sympathetically as you recount your many grievances against the world, including the injustice of medicinal scarcity. By day 5, the worst has passed. The fever breaks, your limbs begin to remember what solid ground feels like, and you can contemplate the possibility of broth without weeping. By the end of the week, you are upright, a bit paler, and surprisingly proud. The family celebrates your recovery with a round of applause and the presentation of fresh linens. The doctor, never one to admit defeat, recommends a nice glass of port to rebuild your strength. You eye the medicine cabinet, newly wary. Congratulations! You've survived Victorian withdrawal, a week-long odyssey of buckets, bedclothes, and questionable reality. Your reward? The realization that perhaps, just perhaps, moderation deserves a place in your medicine chest, right next to the laudanum, just in case. Between the drugs, the gas lamps, the arsenic wallpaper, and the lead in your water, it's amazing anyone survives long enough to be called elderly. Your home, at first glance, is a haven of Victorian domestic tranquility. The lace curtains flutter gently, the parlour glows with warm gaslight, and there are more potted ferns than people. But beneath the surface lies a gauntlet of hazards so elaborate you wonder if the architects were paid by the injury. The average day is an obstacle course of unseen threats, all dressed up in respectable middle-class fashion. Let's start with the walls. Your pride and joy is a fresh layer of emerald green wallpaper, vivid, beautiful, and saturated with arsenic. It was the fashion, after all. Every time you pause to admire the floral pattern, you're also inhaling a whisper of poison. Guests compliment the lively shade, then spend the evening scratching their arms or experiencing headaches. It's the cost of style. Better living through chemistry, you mutter, reaching for your nerve tonic. Lighting is its own adventure. The gas lamps flicker merrily, filling the air with the reassuring scent of burning whale oil and the ever-present threat of carbon monoxide. On a good day, you only feel slightly woozy. On a bad day, you blow out the lamp and wonder if the resulting headache is from the laudanum, the wallpaper, or the air itself. If a lamp breaks, the room instantly fills with a cloud of noxious vapor and a sense of impending litigation. For variety, you might trip over a footstool and send yourself flying into the fire irons. Water is no less menacing. The pipes, if your home is modern enough to have them, are lined with lead. Victorian logic is simple. If it makes the water taste sweet, it must be good for you. You pour yourself a glass, swirl it thoughtfully, and hope the filter, a lump of charcoal and blind optimism, does its job. Otherwise, you stick to beer, tea, or anything brewed long enough to kill whatever else might be living in the supply. Even the furniture is out for blood. The piano has a habit of slamming shut on curious fingers. The fainting couch, for all its velvet luxury, is a minefield for loose springs and the occasional family heirloom lost in the upholstery. The rugs are perfectly positioned to trip anyone bold enough to attempt walking in a hoop skirt. There is an ongoing household debate as to whether the stairs are steeper than the cliffs of Dover, or if the servants are simply clumsy by nature. Cleaning, meant to provide safety, offers its own set of risks. Bleaching powders and carbolic acid are liberally applied to every surface, resulting in polished banisters, gleaming doorknobs, and the occasional chemical burn. You wear gloves, but the gloves themselves are dyed with chemicals that may or may not cause your hands to glow faintly at night. It's all part of the charm. Don't forget the kitchen. The stove spits coal and embers, the knives are sharp enough to cut through bone and possibly time, and the cat frequently attempts arson by napping too close to the fire. Meals are a daily gamble. Undercooked pork, suspect shellfish, and bread so tough you wonder if it's been repurposed from the Roman era. Despite it all, life continues. People adapt, share remedies, and toast each near miss with another dose of something restorative. If you survive long enough, you earn the title of tough as old boots, and rightly so. Congratulations. Your home is a beautiful death trap, and you navigate it with Victorian poise, steady nerves, and just a hint of medicinal support. If the furniture doesn't get you, the wallpaper might. Every magazine features testimonials from famous actresses, socialites, and, allegedly, the Queen herself. You collect empty bottles as souvenirs. Victorian England has discovered the power of celebrity, and nowhere is this more evident than in the wild, relentless marketing of nerve tonics. Every week, you open your favorite ladies' magazine to find yet another beaming duchess, celebrated soprano, or minor royal singing the praises of Dr. Wimbley's elixir for delicate nerves. The advertisements are works of art, with elegantly sketched portraits and solemn guarantees that Lady Constance has never missed a night's rest since discovering the wonders of chloral hydrate and a light supper. Society's leading women are everywhere, giving interviews, writing columns, and providing detailed accounts of their medical regimens. A spoonful of laudanum each morning keeps the blues at bay, confides the Countess of Swansbury in a widely circulated pamphlet. No woman of spirit should be without it. At the theatre, famous actresses compete not just for applause, but for the honor of being the new face of Mrs. Goldsmith's soothing cordial. Their endorsements carry more weight than any doctor's note. After all, if the lead in Macbeth swears by her daily draught, who are you to question it? It's not just actresses and nobles. Writers, painters, even early female scientists are caught up in the tonic craze. One celebrated novelist claims her inspiration comes in a bottle, while a pioneering botanist extols the virtues of a special French brain wine that, she insists, awakens the intellect and pacifies the soul. You begin to suspect that half of London's creativity can be traced directly to a blend of opium, brandy, and a generous dash of hope. The most coveted endorsement, of course, comes from Queen Victoria herself. The Queen is said to favour a particular German nerve tonic, rumoured to contain everything from valerian root to a trace amount of gold dust. Whether or not she actually takes it, the manufacturers trumpet her alleged approval on every label as recommended to Her Majesty the Queen. The palace issues dignified denials, but these only make the rumours more enticing. Every bottle feels a bit more royal when you know the Queen might have enjoyed a sip on a particularly fraught morning. As for you, it's impossible not to get swept up in the hysteria. You save the prettiest bottles, lining them up on the mantelpiece alongside your collection of commemorative teaspoons and royal jubilee plates. The servants are under strict instructions to leave any magazine with a celebrity testimonial on your breakfast tray. At social gatherings, the topic of the latest famous user is always on everyone's lips. Did you hear Lady Emerson has switched to Dr. Bixby's pink elixir? I hear it's marvellous for the nerves and makes your hair grow back. Behind closed doors, of course, things aren't always as harmonious. Famous women are just as likely to be seen in the grips of sleepless nights, pacing drawing rooms and bickering with their housekeepers. The magic of celebrity endorsement is, like most things in Victorian England, equal parts fantasy and frantic self-persuasion. But that doesn't matter. If your favourite novelist claims her best chapter was written with the help of a cordial and a biscuit, you follow her example, biscuit optional. Congratulations, you're living in an age where the path to happiness, beauty, and possibly literary genius is paved with endorsements and empty bottles. The rich and famous aren't so different from you, just slightly more medicated, and much better at pretending it's glamorous. Exercise is encouraged, especially when you're convinced the wallpaper is alive. Who needs Pilates when you have boundless, drug-fueled energy? For most Victorians, the very idea of fitness is tangled somewhere between moral obligation, social theatre, and medical experiment. You are told that moderate exercise will fortify the nerves, sharpen the mind, and ward off melancholia. Of course, nobody mentioned that you'd be attempting your calisthenics after 3 doses of laudanum and a breakfast fortified with cocaine wine. Still, the will to self-improve runs deep. Even if you occasionally forget what you're improving, you begin your morning with Swedish exercises, as recommended by Lady Templeton's Guide to Robust Womanhood. These involve a series of graceful lunges, awkward arm swings, and something called the restorative bend, which looks suspiciously like trying to retrieve a lost earring from under the settee. Each movement is punctuated by a fresh insight, I am one with the ether, or a minor collision with the umbrella stand. The family dog joins in, mostly by accident, and soon everyone in the house is at least slightly more flexible, or possibly just confused. Next comes the constitutional walk. Your doctor insists on it, society expects it, and the weather never cooperates. You bundle up and parade through the local park, accompanied by your friends, your servant, and the occasional hallucination. Every tree becomes an object of contemplation. Every squirrel is a personal trainer in disguise. You wave at Mrs. Hargreaves, who is performing squats behind a hedge and muttering about aligning the chakras. The neighbours are out in force, each group believing their particular system of movement will guarantee health, beauty, and, with luck, a marriage proposal for one of the daughters. If you are truly ambitious, you may enroll in a fitness class at the local gymnasium, a place full of heavy ropes, wooden rings, and the scent of musty optimism. Here, the instructor extols the virtues of the vigorous leap and the moral hop, encouraging everyone to bounce, stretch, and occasionally collapse in a dignified heap. You try your best, but a head full of nerve tonic is not the best foundation for somersaults. Last week, Mrs. Wilton tried to vault the pommel horse and ended up reciting poetry to the potted palms for half an hour. For those who prefer something gentler, there is always croquet, a game beloved for its soothing pace, elaborate etiquette, and the fact that one can participate while sitting down for restorative sips of medicinal wine. The main risk is not pulled muscles but unexpected philosophical debates. Do we exist, or are we merely pawns on a grassy chessboard, which, in Victorian England, is a perfectly normal question to shout during a sporting event? The real secret of Victorian fitness, however, is that it is rarely about the body. It is about discipline, distraction, and the ongoing battle with nervous energy. You find yourself chasing imaginary butterflies through the garden, convinced they hold the key to your spiritual balance. Sometimes you do laps around the drawing room to align the humours. No one asks why. Everyone is too busy with their own regimen. The result? A household full of people in various stages of exertion, all faintly flushed and increasingly convinced that this is what modernity feels like. Congratulations. You have embraced the Victorian fitness craze, where exercise is mystical, mistakes are common, and the most important muscle to stretch is your imagination. And if you never catch those butterflies, at least you're lively enough to keep chasing them. At some point, the men of the household retreat to the smoking room, lock the door, and pray for a return to normalcy. Or at least for the laudanum to run out. Victorian England is a battlefield, and the men have learned to pick their trenches wisely. After weeks of witnessing their wives debate the meaning of spoons, organize midnight seances, and faint dramatically into the blancmange, husbands develop their own coping mechanisms. Their survival instinct? Hide, preferably behind a locked door and a thick cloud of pipe smoke. The smoking room is more than just a sanctuary, it's a fortress. Here, men shed the anxieties of the parlor and gather in groups, united by mutual confusion and the shared hope that the commotion outside will eventually subside. Conversation topics range from international politics to the relative merits of different brands of matches, but the subtext is always the same. What, precisely, is going on at home? The ritual begins with the door bolted shut and the curtains drawn. Pipe tobacco, brandy, and a well-worn copy of the Times are distributed like emergency rations. The men compare notes on their wives' latest adventures. "My wife has taken up singing to the cat," one confides. "That's nothing," another sighs. "Mine just painted the pantry mauve and invited the vicar for interpretive dance." No one bats an eye. In the smoking room, nothing is too strange. When a particularly alarming noise echoes through the house, piano at midnight, recitation of Hamlet from the landing, or the unmistakable crash of the parlor gong, everyone tenses. The bravest volunteer to investigate, armed with nothing but a sense of duty and the hope that the wallpaper hasn't started another argument. Most, however, remain firmly in their armchairs, discussing cricket scores as the safe, predictable soundtrack of sanity. Escape is carefully timed. Dinners are short and strategic. Dessert is often skipped in favor of urgent paperwork. The phrase "I'll be in my study" becomes code for "I intend to survive this evening." Occasionally, husbands are cornered by an enthusiastic spouse wielding a new theory about cosmic vibrations or the medicinal benefits of staring at ferns. Polite nodding and the occasional fascinating dear are crucial survival tools. For some, refuge is found outside the home entirely. Gentlemen's clubs offer peace, billiards, and the company of like-minded men who all pretend that home life is as orderly as their waistcoats. Long walks become longer. Business at the office becomes a sort of spiritual retreat, where paperwork piles up mainly as an excuse to avoid returning before dark. Younger men take notes from their elders, adopting a look of mild bewilderment and always keeping a flask handy. Ostensibly for nerves, actually for fortitude. Sons are quietly trained in the fine art of unobtrusive exits and the danger of lingering too long in the drawing room after supper. Yet, for all the hiding, there's a strange affection beneath the exasperation. Stories of marital chaos are shared with pride, a badge of endurance in a world where everyone is at least a little unhinged. The smoking room, for all its bluster, is a refuge built on love, confusion, and a healthy respect for the unpredictable energy of Victorian womanhood. Congratulations! You've discovered the ultimate male survival strategy: patience, discretion, and, above all, a good lock on the smoking room door. Endure long enough, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be invited to the next séance, if you dare. You schedule a checkup, complain of nerves, and leave with a prescription for exactly what you asked for. The cycle continues. Victorian England's approach to healthcare is a mixture of optimism, ritual, and astonishing gullibility. The doctor's office is less a place for medical innovation and more a revolving door for the well-dressed and the mildly neurotic. You find yourself attending yet another appointment, clutching your diary of symptoms: sleeplessness, melancholy, existential dread, the occasional urge to alphabetize the silverware by spiritual resonance. The doctor is expecting you. In fact, he's been expecting everyone in town. You're greeted by the reassuring scent of camphor, pipe smoke, and paper that's already beginning to curl at the edges. The waiting room is full. Ladies fanning themselves, gentlemen staring fixedly at the wall, and at least one child reciting Latin in a monotone, perhaps as a side effect of syrup. As you wait, you flip through a medical almanac filled with advice on everything from restoring the humors to the benefits of leech rotation. Everyone here has nerves, and everyone knows there's only one real cure. The doctor, immaculate in his frock coat and facial hair, ushers you in with solemn importance. His desk is cluttered with bottles, dried flowers, and a stack of prescriptions written in handwriting that could charitably be called abstract. You recite your usual list of complaints. He nods, asks a few half-hearted questions. Are you sleeping? No. Are you eating well? No. But the marmalade is speaking to you again. Have you tried reducing stress? You live in Victorian England, so that's a definite no. He listens, but only out of courtesy. After all, the solution is already decided. He reaches for his prescription pad, the true engine of the age. The act of renewal is almost ceremonial. A few dramatic scribbles, a flourish of the pen, and suddenly you are the proud owner of another month's supply of tonic for the nerves, drops for delicate dispositions, and Mrs. Plumley's elixir of quietude. The only real uncertainty is whether the ink will dry before the bottle runs out. No one asks about side effects. No one questions the wisdom of treating a sleepless night with a tincture that could put an elephant to bed. Instead, there is a sense of grateful relief. Order has been restored, the bottle will be refilled, and the underlying chaos of Victorian life will be temporarily subdued. You thank the doctor, who assures you with great confidence that the remedy is endorsed by leading minds in London, and especially recommended for anyone troubled by phantoms, indoor fog, or aggressive tea cozies. On your way out, you pass the next patient, who offers a knowing smile and a faint tremor. There's a sense of camaraderie among the regulars, a shared understanding that the line between wellness and well-medicated is delightfully blurry. You stop at the chemist's shop, present your slip, and watch as the pharmacist mixes up another batch of your personal salvation. There's no rush. Everyone is here for the same reason, and the process is half the therapy. By the time you return home, you've almost convinced yourself you feel better already. There's comfort in routine, in seeing the same faces and receiving the same bottle, month after month. Perhaps next visit you'll try something new. Dr. Spindle's invigorating powder, maybe, or the recently advertised soothing pellets of composure. But deep down, you know you'll stick with what works. Congratulations, you've mastered the art of the Victorian prescription renewal. A ritual of reassurance, repetition, and the endless promise of one more bottle to set the world right, at least until your next checkup. You suddenly need more clocks, a third piano, and several new hats. Shopping is soothing until the bill arrives and you accuse the postman of witchcraft. The spirit of retail therapy is alive and slightly deranged in Victorian England. Perhaps it's the laudanum, perhaps it's the restlessness, or perhaps it's just the unspoken rule that if you sit still for too long, someone will ask you to embroider something. Either way, a peculiar fever grips you, the urge to acquire, decorate, and hoard with a single-mindedness that startles even your most eccentric relatives. Your first stop is the department store, a palace of distraction, crammed from floor to ceiling with every conceivable necessity and 100 items you can't identify but must absolutely own. The moment you enter, you're greeted by a symphony of scents. French perfume, beeswax, ink, and, in the glove section, just a hint of existential despair. Attendants glide by in perfect choreography, offering you samples of hair tonic and suspiciously enthusiastic opinions about umbrella handles. What begins as a simple quest for just a few essentials quickly spirals. You remember that your parlor clock no longer matches your mood. Why settle for one? You select another, then another, a small clock for the mantel, a carriage clock for travel, a novelty clock shaped like a melancholy owl, and one enormous grandfather clock that tolls every hour, as if announcing the end of days. Time, you decide, must be visible from every corner of the house. Then it's on to hats. You need hats for morning, hats for walking, hats for dramatic fainting, hats for when you feel mysterious, and hats for when you wish to hide from the laundry list of purchases you just made. Every color, every feather, every possible combination of ribbons and veils. The saleslady quietly suggests that perhaps 14 hats might be enough, but you sense judgment and immediately add a 15th. Next, the musical instruments. A household with less than 3 pianos is practically destitute, at least in your mind. You inspect each one, test a few keys loudly to the confusion of nearby shoppers, and settle on a grand upright with a finish described as spiritually rejuvenating. The salesperson assures you it's the choice of all the best families, including several who have yet to pay their bills. Other essentials appear: umbrellas in every size, parasols to match each gown, vases for flowers you have no intention of buying, and a set of ivory-handled teaspoons for unexpected company. Translation: no company expected, but one must be prepared. Soon, a small army of porters is struggling under the weight of your new possessions, and you are left giddy, breathless, and slightly unsure of where your carriage is parked. Returning home, you orchestrate the placement of every purchase like a general planning a campaign. The clocks are wound, the hats arranged in artistic towers, the new piano given pride of place in the drawing room. For a brief, sparkling moment, you are utterly content. Then comes the bill. You eye the envelope suspiciously, certain it is plotting against you. When the postman appears, you consider accusing him of witchcraft or, at minimum, of complicity in your sudden insolvency. The household shares a tense silence as you contemplate the realities of Victorian accounting. Fortunately, another round of shopping always beckons, and a fresh dose of nerve tonic helps you see the bright side. Congratulations! You have mastered the Victorian shopping spree, a blur of clocks, hats, and heroic self-justification. And if anyone asks why the house is full of ticking, you simply say it's for your nerves. Time, after all, waits for no one, but your parlor is ready for anything. All good things must end. Eventually the fun fades, the insomnia returns, and you're left staring at your reflection, wondering if the mirror is judging you. There comes a point in every Victorian household where the giddy high of laudanum-fueled productivity and shopping sprees collides with the equally impressive force of melancholia. The clocks have all been wound, the hats sorted by emotional significance, and even the wallpaper seems to be sighing with fatigue. You find yourself lingering in doorways, gripped by an inexplicable gloom, wondering whether it was the fourth or fifth piano that tipped the balance from delight to existential dread. At first, you try to shake it off. You prescribe yourself a change of scene, a brisk walk through the park, a cup of cocoa by the fire, or a long, moody stare at the rain-soaked street. But the weather, the street, and even the cocoa seem complicit in your malaise. The family tiptoes around you, wary of sudden sighs and the risk of being drawn into a spontaneous recitation of Tennyson. The dog regards you with concern, or possibly judgment. It's difficult to tell. You turn to your usual remedies, lining up the bottles in neat rows, but the effect isn't what it once was. The laudanum now brings dreams of endless grocery bills and hats that slowly multiply in the night. The nerve tonic tastes like regret. Even the fainting couch, your old companion, feels a bit too lumpy, as if quietly suggesting that maybe you've overdone it. The clocks tick in mournful unison, each chime a reminder of just how long the afternoon can last when one is feeling indisposed. In your gloom, you become painfully attuned to the melancholy that floats through Victorian society like a polite but persistent fog. Friends write letters filled with wistful longing and a touch of dramatic despair. The ladies at tea discuss their latest bouts of the blues, as if comparing recipes. The vicar's wife claims to have seen a ghost in the linen cupboard, but you suspect it was just her own reflection after a long night with the Queen's recommended cordial. Nothing cures the malaise, but everyone has advice. The doctor prescribes a restorative holiday, preferably somewhere damp and far from your usual haunts. Your cousin recommends a new variety of wallpaper. Nothing lifts the spirits like birds of paradise, dear. Even the postman weighs in, suggesting a brisk round of whist or the purchase of a mechanical foot warmer. You try everything. The wallpaper change leads to an afternoon spent questioning the meaning of colour. The holiday to Bath is pleasant enough, though you develop a vague rivalry with the resident pigeons. Card games provide distraction, but not relief. In the end, you surrender to the melancholy, embracing it with the same theatrical flair you once reserved for shopping and piano recitals. This, you realize, is the true rhythm of Victorian life, a pendulum swinging between mania and malaise, invention and inertia. Society has built its rituals, its remedies, and even its furniture around the inevitability of collapse. But in a strange way, this cycle becomes almost comforting. Melancholy is simply another guest in your parlor, to be offered tea and a sympathetic ear. Congratulations! You have survived the come-down, the crash, and the long, reflective evenings of Victorian gloom. Take comfort in knowing you're not alone. Your clocks, your hats, and even your melancholy are perfectly in style. And tomorrow, perhaps, the mania will return. Victorian England is nothing if not consistent. As you settle in for another night, ask yourself, would you have survived the age of respectable madness? Or would you have been the life of the party, one spoonful at a time? You glance around your parlor, clocks ticking, fainting couch slightly askew, and at least 3 bottles of patent tonic winking from the mantel. The ghosts of 100 remedies swirl in the lamplight, each one promising relief, restoration, or simply a brief escape from reality. The day's adventures, shopping, piano recitals, midnight musings, and nervous fits are behind you. Now, in the gentle hush of evening, it's time for reflection. Not too much reflection, though. The mirror is still there, and you're not entirely convinced it's on your side. Victorian England has tested your mettle in ways modern life can hardly imagine. You've navigated the gauntlet of mysterious ailments, female troubles, nerves, the wobblies. Survived the dubious expertise of doctors whose facial hair outnumbered their medical books, and become a connoisseur of pharmacy concoctions that would horrify even the most laid-back modern pharmacist. You've chased butterflies, real or imagined, through parks and parlours, debated metaphysics with the wallpaper, and made lifelong friends with the fainting couch. Perhaps you became a collector, bottles, hats, clocks, and stories, all stacked neatly beside your growing tolerance for opiates and unpredictable shopping bills. Or maybe you mastered the fine art of hiding in the smoking room, quietly waiting out the latest domestic whirlwind, armed with nothing but patience and a flask of restorative sherry. Either way, you adapted. That's what Victorians do best: survive, adapt, and turn every inconvenience into a charming anecdote or an opportunity for another round of tonic. The medicine cabinet was less a cupboard, more a portal, a gateway to 1,000 small adventures and spectacular misadventures. It contained cures for things you didn't even know you had, and some you almost certainly didn't. Laudanum for sleeplessness, bromide for nerves, cocaine wine for inspiration, and soothing syrup for the children, and, let's be honest, occasionally for the adults. There were tonics for melancholy, drops for delicate constitutions, and pills to bring on sleep or, in some cases, philosophical insight. Modern warnings about side effects would have been met with a patient smile and a reminder that, in the absence of certainty, enthusiasm counts for a lot. You might ask yourself, would you have stood out, known for your legendary fainting spells and flair for rearranging furniture at midnight? Or would you have blended in, quietly taking your drops, writing the occasional wistful letter, and hoping the neighbors never found out about the wallpaper incident? Maybe you would have invented your own remedy, bottled it up, and sold it at the local pharmacy as Dr. Smith's marvelous mood mixture, guaranteed to fix what ails you or at least make you forget it for a while. In the end, survival in Victorian England's chemical wonderland wasn't just about making it to bedtime in one piece. It was about finding your place in a world where everyone was a little odd, a little nervous, and always in search of the next cure. You joined a great tradition, equal parts resilience and wild optimism. Congratulations, you've braved the Victorian medicine cabinet, made peace with your inner maniac, and learned the greatest secret of all. Sometimes, the only thing more effective than a tonic is a good sense of humor. Sleep well, history's got your back, and so does that fainting couch. Congratulations! Your eccentricities have made the local paper. Mrs. Featherstone suffers a spell. Parlor curtains never the same. Suddenly, invitations pour in, everyone desperate for a glimpse of your latest episode. Even your migraines have fan mail. In Victorian England, fame is a slippery creature, often eluding poets and politicians but gleefully embracing anyone with a flair for the dramatic. Society pages are hungry for novelty. And what could be more novel than a woman prone to fainting, spontaneous poetry, and the occasional public monologue on the moral perils of cucumber sandwiches? If you are very lucky, or perhaps very unlucky, you'll discover that your nerves are your ticket to celebrity. The process begins innocently enough. You have a spell at the church bazaar, collapse into a strategically placed basket of crocheted antimacassars, and are revived with a splash of Mrs. Plumley's nerve drops. Someone, perhaps the vicar's daughter or a rival with a sharp eye for opportunity, alerts the local newspaper. By breakfast the next day, your name is inked across the society columns, sandwiched between Lady Arbuthnot's new pug and the upcoming sale of moderately haunted silverware. Soon the invitations arrive. Hostesses hope your presence will add excitement to otherwise dreary tea parties. "Do bring Mrs. Featherstone," they whisper. "She's so delightfully unpredictable." Your spells become the highlight of every gathering. You swoon during charades, recite sonnets during supper, and deliver impromptu reviews of the wallpaper. People wait in anticipation, clutching their fans and sherry glasses, ready to witness history, or at least a bit of manageable chaos. The letters pour in. Well-wishers offer remedies. My cousin survived with dandelion bitters and strict avoidance of onions, while admirers pen earnest poetry to your nerves. One ambitious young gentleman sends you a beautifully illustrated chart, mapping your recent episodes, complete with emotional highs and lows plotted like a weather forecast. Storms expected after fruitcake. Clearing by Tuesday. The household takes to these developments with mixed feelings. Your husband alternates between pride, "My wife, the talk of the town," and apprehension, "My wife, the talk of the town." The servants speculate on which curtain will bear the brunt of your next collapse. The dog adopts a new strategy, hiding behind the aspidistra whenever callers arrive. You develop a repertoire. Your fainting is perfectly timed, your sighs exquisitely melodic, your opinions on window treatments surprisingly influential. It becomes an art form. Managing your public persona while still reserving a measure of private peace. You start to curate your ailments, saving your best performance for high-profile gatherings. Sometimes, you catch a glimpse of your reflection and wonder if you are more actress than invalid. Not everyone is charmed. A few stern matrons mutter about attention-seeking, and your great-aunt writes a terse note. Nerves should be private. Dear, but these criticisms only fuel your legend. Even mild scandals help. After all, nothing sells more copies than the suggestion that your spell was prompted by the arrival of Lord Beaconsfield, and not, as you claim, the afternoon Sunday. By the time autumn arrives, you are a bona fide celebrity. Children imitate your dramatic collapses. Artists request to sketch your look of poetic agony. The society pages speculate on your next move. A recovery. A relapse. A shocking return to normalcy? You keep them guessing. Because you've learned the greatest truth of all. Nothing travels faster in Victorian England than the story of a well-timed faint. Congratulations. You're famous for your nerves, envied, invited everywhere, and the unwitting author of a dozen new fashion trends in curtain design. In a world obsessed with decorum, you've made chaos respectable. Not all outbursts are created equal. You quickly learn the subtle art of timing, a dramatic collapse for maximum social advantage, never during dessert, always before the gossip really gets going. It's like being a stage actor, but your only line is, "Oh, my nerves." In Victorian England, expressing one's delicate emotional state is practically a competitive sport. The fainting couch is never far, and neither are the eyes of a dozen expectant onlookers, eager to witness the next perfectly executed display of nerves. Swooning, after all, is the era's most fashionable form of punctuation, an elegant way to end a dull conversation or begin a scandal that will be discussed for weeks. The first rule is location. Meltdowns are best staged where witnesses are plentiful, but not too crowded. Think the drawing room, the garden during a tea party, or near a grand staircase for maximum dramatic effect. Collapsing in the pantry is pointless. Swooning on the marble floor of the conservatory, however, is guaranteed to send shockwaves through the social set. Timing is everything. Too early in the evening, and your efforts will be lost amid the arrival of guests. Too late, and you risk being upstaged by someone's dog. Then comes the art of the swoon itself. A true Victorian collapse is equal parts ballet and improv. The hand flutters gracefully to the forehead, the eyes roll heavenward, and the knees buckle just so, ensuring a soft landing on the nearest available settee or the arms of a conveniently placed admirer. Screaming is reserved for only the gravest of occasions, citing a mouse, for instance, or discovering that the aspic is trembling more than you are. Volume and intensity matter. A gentle sigh and eyelash flutter is appropriate for minor upsets, a misplaced fan, a broken teacup. Save the full-throated wail for moments of true drama, a scandalous remark about your hat, or the announcement that Lady Bertram's fruitcake has been declared inedible. The goal is never chaos for its own sake, but a performance of suffering so exquisitely managed that even your detractors must admire your technique. Of course, every public meltdown requires a supporting cast. Attentive friends rush to your aid with smelling salts, embroidered handkerchiefs, and sympathetic murmurs. Less practiced guests watch with awe, mentally taking notes for their own future displays. Even the family dog learns to stay clear during these episodes. Having once been mistaken for a footstool in the throes of a particularly enthusiastic collapse, there is etiquette too for recovery. One must never leap to one's feet, nor accept too many offers of help. Better to open one's eyes slowly, murmur something about the oppressive heat or the overwhelming emotion, and allow oneself to be led away for a restorative dose of cordial. You may even leave a trail of gossip in your wake. Did you see how pale she went? She must be terribly sensitive or terribly clever. Still, restraint is essential. Too many meltdowns in 1 week, and you risk losing your reputation for genuine fragility. The best Victorian ladies know how to spread out their misfortunes, ensuring each episode feels spontaneous, unique, and slightly mysterious. A well-timed swoon is like a rare flower, admired by all, imitated by many, and understood by only a select few. Congratulations! You have mastered the etiquette of public meltdown, turning every parlor and garden path into your own private stage. In a world that rewards the artful display of distress, you, my dear, are nothing less than a virtuoso of nerves. Your doctor prescribes a change of air, so you're carted off to the seaside. There you enjoy long walks, foul-smelling spa water, and a vivid hallucination involving Neptune and a plate of oysters. The bracing wind does nothing for your nerves, but you get a nice postcard. Victorian medicine is nothing if not optimistic about geography. When the household grows weary of your complaints, or perhaps just your piano improvisations at 3 a.m., the consensus is clear. You need a cure that can't be bottled. Take her to the sea, the doctor declares, waving a prescription that is suspiciously lacking in dosage. Within days, you're bundled into a railway carriage with enough luggage to conquer Belgium, bound for a fashionable resort with the vague promise of recovery and at least one near drowning. Arriving at the coast, you're greeted by the invigorating scent of salt air, wet dog, and industrial coal fires from the next town over. The beach itself is equal parts mud and mystery. Bathing machines trundle along the shore like armored carriages for the delicate, while children shriek with joy and mild hypothermia in the foam. The sea is invigorating, if by invigorating one means freezing and full of questionable things. Nevertheless, you are encouraged by everyone from the local vicar to the seagulls to paddle, splash, or at the very least, be seen staring dramatically into the middle distance. The heart of the cure, however, is the spa. Here, the The truly desperate submit themselves to the mercy of sulfur baths and mineral waters, each boasting a scent that lingers long after you've left the premises. The more it smells, the more it heals, the staff assure you as they hand you a cup of warm, brackish liquid and a towel that has definitely seen better centuries. Between spa sessions, you are urged to promenade along the boardwalk for exactly 47 minutes each morning, pausing only to gasp at the wind or contemplate existential dread while eyeing the lifeboats. Meals are equally restorative and challenging. Breakfast is an egg with the consistency of hope. Lunch, a variety of seafood with more tentacles than flavor. Dinner is a battle of wills between the chef and the ingredients, but the local oysters are renowned for their ability to reawaken the appetite, or, at the very least, the desire to pen your will. Any digestive disturbance is attributed to rebalancing the humors, and more spa water is prescribed. By day 3, you have developed a deep spiritual relationship with your chamber pot and a new appreciation for ginger biscuits. All the while, your mind is encouraged to let go of its troubles. This happens remarkably quickly, especially after an enthusiastic attendant doubles your dose of whatever is in the spa's restorative elixir. The result is a series of vivid seaside dreams. You argue with Neptune about the price of kelp, befriend a mermaid who disapproves of your hat, and compose a brief but passionate letter to a passing lobster. At the end of your prescribed stay, you are declared much improved by all involved. The real benefit, of course, is that you return with a rosy glow, a stack of postcards, and at least 2 scandalous stories to share over tea. The family is pleased, if a bit alarmed by your new interest in marine biology and penchant for humming sea shanties at breakfast. Congratulations. You have survived the traveling cure, a mix of mud, minerals, and mild hallucination. Victorian medicine has once again done its work, and you have the damp feet, distant stare, and questionable health to prove it. It's not just you. Mother is convinced the cat is haunted. Your aunt hasn't slept since Lent, and the housemaid spends her days reciting cryptic poetry. Family dinner now resembles a séance crossed with a community theatre rehearsal. At first, you imagine you are the lone eccentric in a world of sturdy, stoic Victorians. But very quickly, you realize mania is catching. No matter how often the doctor insists, nerves aren't contagious. It starts innocently. A cousin who speaks only in couplets, a grandfather who claims his slippers whisper encouragement, or an uncle who adopts a rigorous regime of therapeutic sherry and philosophy. The family's commitment to melodrama becomes a shared hobby, if not a competitive sport. The breakfast table sets the tone. The atmosphere is tense, as if everyone is waiting for the first sign of poetic agitation. Your mother gazes into her tea, searching for omens. "I saw a cloud shaped like a weasel yesterday," she murmurs. "Surely a sign." Father, unshaven and weary-eyed, mutters something about the political unrest in Belgium, though it's unclear if he means the country or the kitchen. The dog, usually the voice of reason, now barks only at shadows. And, occasionally, the hat rack. The real performance begins as the day unfolds. Aunt Dorothea, a woman once famed for her rationality, now declares herself an expert in dream interpretation and insists on holding mid-morning symbolism circles. Your brother writes tragic limericks and attempts to sell them door to door. The housemaid, inspired by her reading of Byron and an ill-advised spoonful of nerve tonic, delivers passionate soliloquies about the dust beneath the bed. The children, not to be outdone, invent imaginary illnesses to secure extra doses of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. Bedtime stories devolve into gothic melodramas, with every creak of the floorboards attributed to ghosts, goblins, or Great Aunt Edwina's unresolved feelings about the Crimean War. The youngest claims to be the reincarnation of a medieval alchemist, requesting only boiled sweets and a private laboratory. Meal times grow ever more spectacular. Lunch is punctuated by dramatic sighs and urgent declarations of malaise. Someone inevitably swoons, sometimes with sincerity, sometimes out of sheer competitive spirit. The family physician, once a figure of authority, is now mostly a referee, torn between prescribing more tonic and suggesting a group holiday in the countryside, far from any apothecary. Of course, word gets out. Neighbors exchange tales of your household's latest exploits. I hear the Featherstones performed a séance at breakfast. Or, did you know their cat refuses to enter the conservatory? Invitations to polite gatherings become scarcer, while offers to participate in amateur dramatics skyrocket. Even the postman adopts a cautious air, delivering mail with one hand on his hat and one eye on the family's fainting couch. Through it all, there's an odd camaraderie. You may be mad, but you're mad together. A fact that turns the chaos into a kind of peculiar harmony. Family rows are conducted in sonnet form. Disputes over the last piece of shortbread escalate into debates on the nature of fate. The parlor transforms nightly into a stage where the curtain never quite closes and every emotion is given its own round of applause. Congratulations! Mania has gone viral in your household, and you are no longer alone. In Victorian England, there is nothing quite so comforting as knowing your relatives are just as spectacularly unhinged as you are. Pass the nerve tonic and let the curtain rise. Eventually, the doctor replaces your miracle cure with fresh air and restraint. The house grows eerily quiet, tea parties become book clubs, and your diary entries shift from feverish manifestos to a single line. Felt normal, boring, might redecorate anyway. After months of soaring through life on a gentle cloud of laudanum, nerve tonics, and highly questionable restoratives, change finally arrives, as it always does in Victorian England, with an air of reluctant self-improvement and the suspicious aroma of boiled cabbage. The family doctor returns from a weekend conference in Bath, full of new theories about moral discipline and restorative abstinence. He prescribes less of everything, less tonic, less drama, less poetry at breakfast. What you need, he insists, is air. Pure, bracing air. Also, possibly, a turnip. The sudden shift is a shock to the system. The medicine cabinet is locked, the fainting couch dusted and covered, and your daily regimen now consists of walks in the garden, deep breathing, and endless servings of weak tea. At first, you protest. You wander the halls in search of lost bottles, hoping a stray dose remains beneath a sofa cushion. You develop a keen sense of longing for the old days, when the mere suggestion of a nervous spell guaranteed both attention and an extra slice of Battenberg cake. Household routines change. Tea parties, once the scene of thrilling confessions and scandalous giggling, are now devoted to the reading of respectable novels and stern discussions about the weather. When someone mentions Byron, it is only in reference to the family dog's latest indiscretion. The piano is played at sensible hours and always in a major key. Even the cat appears subdued, as if disappointed that no one has accused it of being haunted for at least a week. Your relatives, forced to abandon their creative afflictions, attempt to reinvent themselves as models of Victorian restraint. Aunt Dorothea channels her energy into the local temperance league, delivering rousing speeches on the dangers of overly emotional upholstery. The housemaid, robbed of her poetic monologues, settles for rearranging the pantry with geometric precision. Your brother's tragic limericks are replaced by a thorough and ultimately fruitless attempt to catalogue all the teaspoons in the county. There are, of course, moments of relapse. On rainy afternoons, you catch your reflection in the window and feel the old urge to swoon or compose an epic about the injustice of umbrella racks. But the spell passes. You pour another cup of weak tea, arrange your shawl, and think, maybe just a little redecorating, nothing too grand, perhaps a new antimacassar or two. The rest of the world hardly notices your transformation. The society pages, ever hungry for novelty, have moved on to fresh scandals. Lady Something's pug has developed a taste for brandy, and the mayor's wife is rumoured to sleepwalk in search of the perfect chutney. Your name is only occasionally mentioned, always with a hint of nostalgia. Do you remember when Mrs. Featherstone fainted in the rose garden? Such spirit, such curtains. In this new, quieter existence, you find a kind of comfort. Life slows, routines return, and you discover the subtle pleasure of boredom, a luxury previously lost in the swirl of Victorian mania. The diary fills with simple entries. Walked, read. Wondered what the dog is thinking. Sometimes you almost miss the chaos. Almost. Congratulations. You have survived the great Victorian come-down. You are, at last, a model citizen, or as close as anyone can be in a house still echoing with the distant memory of poetry, laughter, and mild hallucinations. And if you do redecorate, no one's likely to blame you. So tonight, as you tuck yourself into your clean, quiet bed, maybe whisper a gentle thank you to your ancestors, the ones who managed to survive an era when the cure for nerves involved a healthy dose of hallucinations and at least one accidental trip to the seaside. Because for all the chaos, the fainting spells, the midnight piano concerts, and the epic shopping sprees inspired by a few drops of laudanum, those Victorians were nothing if not resilient. They endured corsets so tight they could barely breathe, medicine cabinets that doubled as chemistry sets, and a society that considered emotional outbursts not just normal, but practically a competitive sport. Let's be honest. Surviving a single day in the age of miracle drugs took more than just a steady hand with the medicine dropper. It took stubborn hope, a dash of denial, and the ability to laugh, eventually, at your own misadventures. The world may have looked tidy on the outside, but beneath the doilies and polite conversation, everyone was just a little bit unhinged. And honestly, it's comforting to know they made it through, even if it was sometimes with the help of a very questionable prescription. So as you drift off tonight, surrounded by pillows, hot water bottles, and the glorious absence of arsenic wallpaper, take a moment to appreciate just how far we've come. No more nervous tonics required. No need to redecorate the living room at 2 a.m. unless you really want to. Just the simple peace of knowing you're safe, you're warm, and the only thing keeping you up tonight is maybe a slightly overactive imagination. Because history isn't just a catalogue of suffering, it's proof that people, no matter the era, find a way to muddle through. They laugh, they survive, and sometimes they even turn mania into a new kind of normal. Sleep well, my friend. May your dreams be vivid, your medicine mild, and your ancestors eternally entertained. Good night.